It's quiet here. Now, outside these buildings, all you can hear is the sound of the breeze and calls of birds. But when I was a young man, a research psychologist visiting this place, standing outside these buildings, all you could hear was human screams. This was Pennhurst.
Those screams, heard by Dr. Conroy years ago, like these shuttered and boarded buildings, are now silent. The residents of these halls are all gone, but held within this brick and mortar is their story, a story that echoes to the core of our nation and resonates with the spirit of our people, especially Americans with disabilities. Contained within 20 empty buildings resides the narrative of some of those very Americans. Theirs is an account of tremendous suffering and darkness, met by incredible courage and fortitude of spirit. This is the story of a silenced and abandoned people finding a collective voice, claiming their freedom and changing our world and our hearts forever. In 1908, the institution was established under the name the Eastern Pennsylvania Institution of the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic. As defined by its founding legislation, its express purpose was to be a home for the, quote, detention, care, and training of idiotic and feeble-minded persons. Time would bear out a strong emphasis on this leading directive of detention. In that time, medical treatment for the intellectually disabled consisted of forceful segregation and sterilization of youth deemed as, quote, feeble-minded. The belief was that this wholesale practice was best for the sake of the disabled and for society at large. It was social Darwinism in literal, brutal practice. Over the first half of the 20th century, the complex swelled from a few hilltop halls overlooking the Schuylkill River into a 1,200-acre complex of over 25 buildings. In 1924, the name was changed to Pennhurst State School and Hospital, a name that would eventually earn infamy. In time, the complex housed upwards of 3,500 patients. Through most of Pennhurst history, the admission of individuals to the institution required only a court order or a doctor's certification of an individual's mental retardation and need of care. Such certification would irreversibly change an individual's life. Over its 80 years of operation, more than 10,500 souls were dispatched to Pennhurst. Many were children at the time of their admission. They would grow from childhood to old age, with no choice of leaving the institution, no opportunity or freedom to return to larger society. Theirs was an America decidedly without liberties. In hospital-like dormitories, the interned residents lived year upon year, sleeping in beds stacked end to end in great halls. The extremely disabled were confined to metal, cage-like cribs. By the 1950s, conditions at Pennhurst had deteriorated to a dangerous level. Chronic understaffing meant that residents, especially those with the greatest needs, were largely unsupervised. Custodial warehousing was the norm for those with the most severe disabilities, with little or no attempt made to provide any meaningful therapy. The perceived professional wisdom of the time was that individuals with severe and profound intellectual disabilities were hopeless. It was the prevailing belief they could not progress. Any attempt at treatment was viewed as meaningless. For a population of 3,500 residents, the institution had a staff of only 600. Most residents suffered injuries or abuse at the hands of others or themselves. Despite the heroic work of some underpaid and grossly overworked staff, the tide of unmet human need at Pennhurst vastly overwhelmed the institution's resources. The horror of life at Pennhurst remained neatly hidden from public view. The sprawling forested grounds deliberately kept these forgotten people and their plight concealed from public knowledge. A movement of change was building, however, growing with the larger civil rights movement of the 1960s. Residents and resident advocates were starting to organize. In 1968, Bill Baldini was a journalist working with a local NBC affiliate. Baldini had become aware of the conditions at Pennhurst, and the station allowed him to pursue the story.
We entitle our investigative report, "Suffer the Little Children."
In their living rooms, the citizens of southeastern Pennsylvania watched the reality of the horrors and injustices just beyond their own backyards.
The 2,800 children, young and old alike, residing within the confines of Pennhurst are for the most part protected from society, and the granite wall of ignorance and social blindness protects society from them.
The public was shocked and sickened by what they saw. The winds of change began to finally shift with the turning of a new decade. Through the 1970s, the civil rights movement of the intellectually disabled began to crystallize in the form of a series of unprecedented lawsuits. Through these cases, access to public education was open to the intellectually disabled. Ultimately, their rights were recognized to be constitutionally protected under the 14th Amendment. Most significant, though, was a case involving a young woman named Terry Lee Halderman. Admitted to Pennhurst at age 12, in the 11 years Terry lived at Pennhurst, her development regressed. She lost her limited ability to speak and suffered over 40 reported injuries, many the direct result of physical abuse. In Halderman versus Pennhurst, the class action lawsuit representing Terry's plight and that of many others at the institution, Judge Raymond Broderick ruled that forced institutionalization of disabled people was unconstitutional. The landmark ruling ultimately closed Pennhurst and numerous other institutions like it. No more could the disabled be denied their rights as American citizens. No longer would those with special needs be hidden away in secluded institutions. Basic human rights and protected civil liberties were legally theirs at last. It was vision and imagination, as well as struggle and determination, which transformed those screams heard so long ago by Dr. Conroy into voices contributing to our society.
It was shortly after Judge Raymond Broderick's landmark decision in Halderman versus Pennhurst. Late one night at home, the judge's phone rang. He answered the phone, and on the other end, a young man said to him, in halting words, "Judge Broderick, I called to say thank you. I've just learned how to use the telephone. This is the first phone call of my life." The caller had lived at Pennhurst and was now living in a group home in a regular Philadelphia neighborhood, living alongside the rest of us, employed and contributing to society. It's been asked if the people who left Pennhurst were better off. That's the ultimate question about America's efforts to do away with big, isolated institutions for people with intellectual disabilities. After 30 years of research, the answer is unquestionably yes. Those people who move from large institutions to small community homes are better off in practically every way we know how to measure. It's one of the most successful social experiments of the 20th century.
The struggles at Pennhurst by the residents and their advocates transformed a very dark chapter in American history to a hugely positive outcome. Their noble efforts eliminated the need for Pennhurst and hundreds of other institutions like it by reintegrating residents into society. In this way, people with intellectual disabilities could enjoy their freedom and liberty, and society could finally benefit from their contributions as full American citizens.